Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I'm honored to bring you Brian's Drive-In Theater with Brian Walker. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm well tonight, Hercules. I've been on the road for the last couple of weeks, having a good time, and I wanted to talk about the things that we all associate with summer. And I've been at the beach for roughly 2 weeks, so I thought we'd talk about beach party movies.
That sounds like a splendid idea. I'm looking forward to what you have to share.
Well, this is probably going to be a two-parter for us. I'm sure this is going to spill over into June because there's actually a lot of these films. The timeline for beach movies is early to mid 1960s. By 1967, it was over with. It had been over with for some time. The genres most associated with American International Pictures, Frankie Avalon and Ned Jello had a 1963 film titled Beach Party with John Ashley, great beach party actor. They had a 7 film run of beach party movies at American International, and I thought we would actually talk about those next month. What I want to talk about this month are the ones that were sort of the knockoffs. They were aimed at the same audience, had very similar themes, but were produced by different studios. Some of them had higher production values than AIP, and that wasn't always that hard to do. Most of their stuff looked okay on screen by the early 60s. Quality cinematography, decent character actors, people who could read lines pretty well, and had some notoriety. They employed Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, Basil Rathbone, big horror greats. I'm certainly not bad mouthing AIP at all. But one of my good friends, really interesting acquaintance from the past is actor Aaron Kincaid. Aaron sort of became famous as a beach party actor. He was in several beach party movies, both for AIP, for American International. He's in Ski Party, which is a lot of fun if you haven't seen that movie. But he also did some away from American International. One of the ones that he did that I was a big fan of was called Beach Ball. And these beach movies often had musical acts that would appear, and either sometimes the musical acts would actually be woven into the story, and the casts would mingle, a little bit like in the American International films, or sometimes they were just shot at the Whiskey a Go-Go or the Haunted House or one of the other clubs down on the Sunset Strip, and then they were just spliced into the drama in the middle. Either way, you get to see some bands from the 60s that you would never have ordinarily seen, in a movie. Now, Beach Ball was a higher, was a bigger budgeted affair, and it stars Aaron Kincaid, Chris Knoll, who did a lot of beach party movies, also Ed Burns. Ed was Kooky on 77 Sunset Strip, and by the 60s was doing films like this. He had an interesting career. Gail Gilmore is in it, Brenda Benet, and the musical acts are the Supremes, the Righteous Brothers, and Four Seasons. So those are heavy hitters for 1965, and the Supremes had so many top 4, well, to number 1 hits, and the Righteous Brothers and the Four Seasons were really popular at that time as well.
I remember the movies were spoofed quite a lot. Like I remember there was a Saturday Night Live skit with Princess Leia, and there was like a Star Wars beach party type skit. And I remember there were a lot of other parodies that featured somebody named Moondoggy.
Yeah, well, that's Gidget. Yeah. The Gidget movies, there again, that's probably, we could do that in July, Greg. The Gidget movie, that's another offshoot. And the Gidget movies predate the American International Beach Party movies, because they were 1959 with Sandra Dee, the first Gidget movie. There again, that was a quality motion picture, good budget. The ones that Aaron were in were, like I said, quality films and had decent casts. He's also in The Girls on the Beach, and that's I like all of his beach movies, but that might be my favorite because it's got such a deep cast. A lot of cast members are you went on to did other things. Aaron's in it along with Gail Gilmore, who did a lot of movies like this, but Lana Wood is one of the cast members in The Girls on the Beach. She went on to do Peyton Place, or was doing Peyton Place, roughly around the same time, which was the big primetime, soap opera from the 60s, really kind of the precursor to things like Dynasty from the late 70s and early 80s. It was the first like nighttime soap opera that I can remember, which was spun off of the movie of the same name. But she was a major character on the TV version of Peyton Place, and the sister of Natalie Wood, from West Side Story. Natalie Wood was A-list movie star from the day one. She's in Miracle on 47th Street or
34th Street.
30. I think it is 34th. 47th Street. I bet there's a different Miracle on 47th Street. Who knows? Depends on what part of town. Yes, Miracle on 34th Street. Sorry, with John Payne, and it's just a great film. But Natalie Wood, oh gosh, I mean, how many huge pictures did she do? Just a gorgeous, beautiful actress, and way more talented than a lot of critics would have suggested at the time. I think she was way better. A lot of critics at the time would always say that her performances were wooden or whatever. And they're not. I mean, they're great if you go back and watch them. She's in a couple of movies that are kind of questionable, but you do what the studio tells you to do.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, I used to enjoy. I don't remember the movies, like they blur together into like a big movie, I guess, or like the genre.
Well, yes, that
I used to enjoy them back when I was a kid, I remember.
And you mentioned the parodies. I used to watch the Carol Burnett show.
Yes, me too.
I think it was on Saturday nights, but I'm not really sure. And she did a takeoff, but Steve Lawrence is in the skit. It was really funny, for the time. And she's got this giant, welded on bouffant like Annette Funicello, but much, more exaggerated, more Bob Mackie than anything else.
During the mom and pop video days, the mom and pop store, and we've talked about this in the past, where you can find like movies that you'll never see again.
Yeah. I collected a bunch of those too. Yeah.
There was a parody called Geek Maggot Bingo. I remember that was a disturbing takeoff of the genre.
That's a new one on me.
I saw that once. I've never come across it again.
There are some other people in it. Laurie Saunders, for anybody who watched Petticoat Junction, was in this one. She was one of the, who was she? Betty Joe, Bobby Joe, Billy Joe. One of those, but was the long? She was the brunette Joe, and was the longest lasting of the Bobby Joes. I think that's what she was. Well, anyway, she also did some 60s and 70s horror films. Beautiful, and she's good horror actress. It's a shame that she didn't continue on with her career. But she She had a good go of it though for a while. Leslie Gore is in it. She's one of the musical acts, and the Girls on the Beach is a famous Beach Boys song. So the Beach Boys are in the movie too. And it's great being able to see some of these mid-60s musical acts. I know you're probably not the big fan of music that I am, but you I've been listening to this music my whole life. It's on satellite radio, which I listen to all the time. Unfortunately, I don't listen to regular radio anymore and haven't. And gosh, like I said, for some of these acts that you see in these movies, this might have been the only time that they were ever, in anything got released. Well, a big favorite of ours is a movie that Tommy Kirk was in. It's a beach movie. It's called It's a Bikini World.
Okay.
It was non-American international. It stars Deborah Wally, who was also in Beach Party movies, and was the second Gidget. And it also has Bobby Boris Pickett in it, who sang the Monster Mash, and Susie Kay, who was in some soap operas in the late 60s and started out in kind of youth-oriented films in the early 1960s. But the movie has some great musical acts in it. It has Eric Burdon in The Animals, which you would never expect to see in a Beach Party movie. There's the Castaways. I think they were a kind of a one-hit band, but their big song was "Liar Liar, Pants on Fire." And the Toys are in it. They had a few. They were a girl group in the mid '60s. They had a few hits. No, James Brown's in Ski Party. But hey, that's another. He's got a good point. James Brown is in Ski Party. The Godfather of Soul is in a Beach Party movie. I mean, how cool is that?
That is very cool.
Well, and like I said, the music in a lot of these beach films is sometimes the best reason to watch them, really. The music in the AIP movies wasn't bad, and Leslie Gore is in Ski Party too, for that matter. In addition to being in The Girls on the Beach,
they had dance numbers too. I remember the weird dance things that they would do.
Well, Candy Johnson was in several of the AIP Beach Party movies, and she's a blonde, very shapely, who was a dancer. But would wear these costumes that when she danced what would you call that effect? Which the fabric had something attached to it that would make it shimmy. And she's a staple in those first few movies, and just sort of a sight to behold. I wish they had done more with her character. She was a singer too. She had her own record label, as a matter of fact, and I think it was called Canjo Records or something like that, and she released some music. But anyway, where I was going with this is I had going back to Aaron Kincaid. Greg and I were lucky enough to meet Aaron on a number of occasions. He was gracious enough to invite us into his home. He cooked dinner for us.
Oh wow!
I don't know how many times. He was a very good cook too. And I loved his home. He lived on Easton Drive, about midway through Beverly Hills. Several other well-known people, and one notorious, unfortunately, also lived on the same street as Aaron did. Yvette Vickers from, oh gosh, she's in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. She's the 50-Foot Woman's husband's girlfriend. She's in Attack of the Giant Leeches, and she gets leeched to death. Yvette Vickers had a really cool career. She lived kind of across the street from Aaron, and I don't want to bring up a big downer, but during the Manson murders in the late 1960s, the person that Sharon Tate was murdered along with was Jay Sebring, her hairdresser and one-time boyfriend, and he lived on Easton Drive.
Hmm.
So Aaron lived at kind of an interesting area. His home was built in the late teens as a hunting lodge, and in the 1920s had been turned into a speakeasy. Hollywood types, could drive up there and under the guise of going to the lodge, and it's a full setup bar. Each room had trap doors and things like that, which he showed a lot of them to us. You could get from his bedroom to his garage, which was, I think, like three stories, just by going down the series of trap doors. Not having.
What was the purpose of having trap doors?
Well, so you could get away if the cops showed up.
With the speakeasy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah. And one night, Greg and I went over there, went over to Aaron's for dinner, and he took us back into, he had a bookcase that was built into, it was just built into the wall. It was off of his main living area. And it was, the living room was beautiful. It had these teak wood beams that were, now over 100 years old. Nobody had painted anything, so everything looked pretty much like it did when it was built. Just beautiful, and he had furnished it really well too, in kind of keeping with a kind of a Hollywood spirit. He had a lot of Hollywood memorabilia, pieces from different sets from famous films that he collected over the years. One of the lamp in one of the lamps in his living room was a set piece from Casablanca.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, amazing. Really, really pretty house. Anyway, he took us over to the bookcase, swung it open, and behind the bookcase, there's this really neat lounge area with a bar. And we watched a movie back there. It was a Keith Andes film noir movie. Keith Andes and Angela Lansbury, called A Life at Stake. Kind of an interesting movie that we watched with him. And he mixed drinks for us. He was a very gracious host and told us so much about working on the Beach Party films and the people he got to work with when he was making those. Like I said, Aaron,
that is great when you develop closeness with celebrities whose work you enjoy. That is fantastic, giving you a whole different perspective on the person and their entertainment.
Well, he was not a computer guy. Did not want to have anything to do with the World Wide Web. Refused to have a computer. I was going to bring my laptop over just to show him my website. He didn't want anything like that in his house. So it just wasn't his thing. And he didn't quite get it. But he, I think, was so blown away by the fact that there were so many people out there who were interested in what he was doing today and loved his films and remembered him well. And I think it just made his last years a lot happier. I think it really did.
Yeah, I'm sure it did too.
Mm-hmm. No, he just seemed to be so appreciative is not the word. I think he was just sort of humbled by it. Now he rolled with the punches. Once his acting career didn't go the way he wanted it to go, he went and found something else to do. He became a male model in the 1970s, a very successful one. Did a lot of print ads and a lot of commercials. He was a handsome man, so you can't, I guess if you got the goods, and he was, and he could. Interestingly, when we knew Aaron, he was he had some heart problems, and health-wise, he wasn't in poor health or anything like that. But he did have some heart issues. He could crane his neck or face in a way that it pulled the wrinkles back. I'm not saying he was horribly wrinkled or anything like that. But I'm just saying it sort of took like 10 or 15 years off his face. And I wish he'd taught me how to do it. But he didn't. You know, he took that secret to his grave, unfortunately. But if I ever did it, I'd be walking around permanently kind of like that. But, but he could, I don't know how he did it. But it just sort of stretched everything back. It looked natural. It didn't look weird or stitched or sort of a plastic surgery disaster or anything like that. It just made it look, whoa, you look years younger. And just like I said, so gracious. One of the nicest people on earth. Had lots of, I can't repeat any of it, but had lots of dishy things to say about some of the people he'd worked with in the past. People he loved working with, people he hated working with, but he talked about all of it, and so much fun to be with. Which we have this documented on some form of some sort of video that we were using about 20 years ago, whatever it was. It's sort of digital, but I think there's still a tape involved. So it's kind of that analog digital video. We watched it not too long ago. I think we did convert it over into a different format. I think we converted it over to DVD.
Now, you know a lot about movies, different genres of movies, and you speak with facility on them, for years, and you always have interesting insights. And again, I've encouraged you to do this before. I'll encourage you to do it again. Write a book, Brian. Your stories are fascinating. Your stories are gold.
Well, why not? Like I said, I'll have some spare time. I'll think about it.
I see stuff on coffee tables. I see all sorts of. I can see it in my mind. It's right here.
There you go. Anyway, Aaron had this big old white Cadillac, huge. I mean, it was white with a red interior, and he drove us all around Hollywood and showed us Humphrey Bogart's house, where Charlie Chaplin lived, and they lived, not in Beverly Hills. They lived in Hollywood. They lived in the hills. And the roads are very circular up there, and the homes are beautiful. It's just a really special part of Hollywood that unfortunately we would never have seen if it hadn't been for him. He also took us to the grocery store that you see in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When Kevin McCarthy and Donna Winter get into the grocery store, he took us to that grocery store. We went inside. It was still operating at that time as a grocery store in Hollywood. It's up there in the hills. So it's things like that he showed us that we never would have seen before. And he took us to what's the Mexican place that we went to? It was the last place that Sharon Tate ate dinner at. I know it's kind of creepy, but I can't think of it. That
is kind of creepy.
It is. But you know what? Great margaritas. Well, no, I mean, what is that place called? Greg used to collect books and matches from places we've been. He would scoop them up. He'd always have like 5 or so. And we have a book of matches from that place, and I cannot think of what it was. El Coyote.
El Coyote? Yes. I was going to say El Coyote. That's the name that popped into my head, but I figured now it's probably not called El Coyote.
It's a nice. He took us to some. We went to some great restaurants with Aaron too. The El Coyote isn't anything special, but it was good. Oh, what is that called? The Smokehouse in Burbank. We went there several times with him. He really liked the Smokehouse. It's just down from Warner Brothers Studio. And there were some episodes of The Sopranos, the HBO series, that were shot in the restaurant because it was mid-1940s architecture and design. Very dark inside with like dark red patent leather everywhere. Very neat place. Lots of Hollywood, old Hollywood smattered all over the place. We saw a number of people in there too. We saw Moby in there, which I thought that was weird that this big vegan is in the place called the Smokehouse, known for its ribs. I did not see Moby eat ribs. I saw Moby drink profusely, but
Well,
and
the drinks were bacon, I guess.
well, I don't know if we had drinks there or not, but Moby seemed to be happy with it. So, but Aaron exposed us to a different part of Hollywood that we would never have got. You don't get to see what he did for us on Sunset Boulevard or on Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, and I like Hollywood Boulevard. I don't have a problem with that. But he showed us some of the other things, and he gave me a couple of his scrapbooks about his career that he kept, and select pieces of memorabilia. And he was also an artist as well, and he could do landscapes or beautiful things, or he could do really good caricatures. And I think the caricatures are my favorite of the two.
Drawing caricatures, or
yes, and usually old Hollywood. I like James Cagney, Betty Davis. Yeah, well, in our dining room for Aaron had we have a copy of it. We don't have the real painting of it, but it's a portrait of Betty Davis holding a serving platter for Joan Crawford out of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Oh wow!
And the rat tail is hanging out of it. It's really so well done, and I had to put it in the living room when he gave it to me. I mean, in the dining room, that is. But just such a cool piece. One of my most beloved things that I've got.
That is awesome, and you're taking us behind the scenes of the movies, in a way you haven't done before. So thank you for doing that.
Well, fortunately, I've been doing it for a long time, and it kills me to say it, but so many of the people that I got to know through the website have since passed on. I'm glad for what we had. I mean, the people I got to meet. But if you don't reach out as soon as possible, things get lost, and I really do think that there's no time like the present. Anything that you want to do at all, if you have a big life goal and you need some time to do it, if you can swing it, do it. And get out there and do it now, because you might not be able to do it next year.
That's very true. You do meet interesting people. Like I remember, I wasn't friends with him as you were, but I got to know David Carradine, and David Carradine was once a quick interview on my show. Then we had like years before Kill Bill came out, he was telling us about Kill Bill, and that was his new big project. And a lot of people had a difficult time with David. They would say that he was mean, that he was unapproachable. I never found him to be mean or unapproachable. I always had fun with him. And he always plugged me at conventions and things like that.
Really?
Lloyd Kaufman used to do that too. Lloyd's still alive, I believe.
Yes.
Lloyd, he'd address audiences and say, "Oh, we have celebrities in the audience," and then he'd always list me first, even though I was by no means I had a fringe cable show. I wasn't a major celebrity, but he'd always pretend that I was at events. And David would do the same thing, and we had some interesting conversations about some of his films, especially Circle of Iron, which is one of the more obscure films, and I love that movie. So we had some really great conversations about that, and I was very sad to hear that he died, because he was a very fascinating and very unique person.
Well, and for me, he's sort of, I mean, he's John Carradine's son, so I already gotta like him. Do you know what I mean? Yes. I'm such a big horror fan, and John Carradine, this is his son. You've got to, but David Carradine, not to take anything away from him, was a star in his own right. Death Race 2000 is one of my favorite movies.
Yes.
but he was kung fu. I don't know if you remember the series that he had. I
Yes, I
believe
do.
it was an ABC series, hugely popular. I was in grade school when Kung Fu was on in first run, and it was just immensely popular for people of that age, kind of late adolescence, early teen. Um,
I remember Kwai Chang Caine and Master Po and the other master's name I don't remember, but yeah, as quickly as you can, snatch the pebble from my hand. When you can snatch the pebble from my hand,
I've never heard anything bad about David
No,
Carradine, and I know on the series Kung Fu, he would bring in older actors who maybe weren't working as much. I think Jock Mahoney was on an episode of Kung Fu. That's just an example, So I've never heard anything bad. Some people you do hear bad things about, but he's not one of them I've ever heard anything bad about.
he was also in a very obscure sword and sorcery movie called The Warrior and the Sorceress.
Well, kind of like his father. I mean, he made a lot of movies. Gosh, John Carradine, I think he was in like every third movie produced for about 20, and everything from A-list stuff down to grade Z, bottom of the barrel. That didn't seem to affect his career at all.
Right.
He just did. He just worked, And these people have to support themselves. They have to make money. I get it.
I love his father in The Howling.
Yes, yes, very much so. A
Yeah,
movie that
fantastic.
I saw The Howling at the drive. As a matter of fact,
Very cool.
it was, and I like the movie. I haven't seen that for a long time.
It's been a while.
It has.
Do you think the Beach movie will ever make a comeback?
No,
Okay.
but at the time when the beach movies came about, and even if it did, it wouldn't have the same spirit. Maybe I should say that. I probably shouldn't be so declarative, but at the time when those movies came out, there were probably a lot of Americans who'd never been to the beach. Travel took a long time if you by car. The interstate system was still pretty new in the early 1960s. It was started in 1955, 1956 by the Eisenhower administration. Cars weren't as fast as they are now. Not as many airports. Flying was horribly expensive, until the 60s. So I don't think a lot of people had ever probably even seen one. Especially if you lived in the Midwest or somewhere where it wasn't easy to get to.
Jaws killed, I think, the beach movies also, like put the final nail into the coffin. Jaws disturbed me, not because
Really?
of the movie that it was, but because I am Greek and I grew up spending my summers in Greece, which is mostly a bunch of small islands. So the beach is a very big part of your reality. And here were people, not only in the movie Jaws, but in real life during the showings of the movie Jaws, people were afraid to go to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And people would go to the beach, but not in the water. And, what's the point? So I knew that because, again, I'm Greek and we eat a lot of fish, I knew that you could eat sharks. So during the time that Jaws was playing and scaring people off of beaches, I made sure I ate lots of grilled shark. Just that was my reaction to the Jaws movies. But after that, I noticed there weren't that many movies, unless they were horror movies, whether sharks or mutant breeding creatures or whatever on the beach. There weren't as many beach movies that were positive after Jaws.
True. And you know what? You can have horror at the beach. You can have terrible things that happen in an idyllic, for some people, an idyllic setting. That's what makes great horror. It's the juxtaposition of good and bad. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen so well in The Beach Girls and the Monster, which is 1965, kind of the middle beach party movie genre, production, craze, whatever. It was shot by John Hall, who had been in the Universal Technicolor productions in the 1940s, like Aladdin Nights and Alibaba, with Maria Montez. He was the hero in them. By the 60s, he'd done some TV production. He did his own syndicated television series called Raymar in the Jungle in the 1950s. And in the 60s, needed some work, so he put together his own film, which is fun to watch, but it's not it's not great cinema, but it's fun to watch. I run it sometimes because it is public domain, and it's the public domain John Hall film that I could show. I guess that would be the best way to put it. So you can have horror on the beach. Why not? And there's also the horror of Party Beach. One of my favorite movies, shot by director Del Tenney, who primarily did horror films to great effect. He made his fortune just doing just a very few horror films, controlling the production and such. They were big hits when they were originally released. He did several films. The Horror Party Beach may be the one he's best known for, but he also did a film that's become known as I Eat Your Skin.
I remember that.
Okay. Which has nothing to do with anybody's skin getting eaten. It's a great exploitation title. The posters are really good. But the movie was shot, and then it sat on a shelf for 7 years, and then it was bought out of the need for a guy who had just made a movie called I Drink Your Blood. Jerry, oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. But anyway, he needed something for the bottom half of the drive-in double bill, and bought that from Del Tenney. And then he retitled it. I think initially it was called Voodoo Bloodbath, and he retitled it I Eat Your Skin.
Yes, Lloyd is good at that. Lloyd Kaufman, and Tim Beckley now who's passed on. Tim Beckley was phenomenal with that too. Just take something and give it like a lurid title, and the lurid title draws you in, and you have to know what's in the movie.
Well, Del Tenney did several horror films. He did Curse of the Living Corpse, which is a movie that I love. And it's a period horror film. It's Roy Scheider's first movie. Roy Scheider from the 7-Ups. Yeah. And Jaws, as a matter of fact, yes. His first movie was a Del Tenney horror film.
Wow.
Yeah, cool, huh? And he intersects with Candace Hillenboss there, because she's in The Curse of the Living Corpse, and she's the star of Carnival of Souls, which is probably one of the most famous public domain horror films from the early 60s. It's one of my, how many of these films do I keep saying are my favorite? But it's one of my favorite. Yeah. Oh, a lot of my favorite movies are public domain. Interesting. You wouldn't think so, but
yeah, a lot of my favorite movies are in the public domain now.
Do you know why I think that is? We've touched on this before. It's because we've seen them so many times. They started running those in the 70s, the syndication packages, because they didn't have to pay for them, and I think we have seen them a million times. And I love Carnival of Souls. I mean, I like the eerie atmosphere. It's very offbeat and different. It's unlike any other horror film that I've ever seen. I really like the mood of it. Now, it was made to a cost, and there are some rough bits of it here and there, but I think it's really effective and really creepy. The first time I watched it, I got kind of creeped out by it.
And the ghouls in it look like the ones in Night of the
Living Dead. Yes.
George Romero saw.
I think George Romero did see Herc Harvey's Carnival of Souls. I think he probably did.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, you borrow from the best.
Well, it's a project that I'm working on that you're definitely invited to is eventually when we get into costuming and like sets and things like that is going to be inspired by Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be part of the inspiration for that particular thing.
Well, that sounds great. Maybe we could do I Eat Your Skin,
That would be awesome.
which is public domain, because when Del Tinney, who was a very savvy business person, who would never have let something slip into the public domain, but that did because he sold it.
And Greg, next time you don't have to remain off screen. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, you're more than welcome to be visible.
Oh, he'll duck his head.
Okay, very good.
Sorry, I don't mean to be the disembodied voice,
You can duck your head in. There he is.
There.
It's all-
How you doing, Greg?
I've got the vacation glove.
Yeah, he looks like leather too.
But it's been fun. But
Yeah, it has.
my face is burned off.
Yeah,
But,
we've had a great time on vacation.
Yeah, I know you look you look and you sound very happy. So I'm glad that you took this vacation.
Oh, me too. It's been a great de-stressor from the spring semester. And it's just nice to get away for a while. It's been kind of an odd year or so. But anyway, you should be happy at the beach. And a lot of beach movies are comedies. They might have some light drama in. I guess there's got to be a reason for the comedy. And you do see a lot of really interesting comedy actors, mostly on their way down. Buster Keaton is in The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini. And I mean, I have a lot of respect for the old silent comedians, and Buster Keaton was arguably the best, or one of the best, if not the best.
Robert Cummings, Basil Rathbone. There's several of those actors,
Oh, there's a lot of big names, but Boris Karloff is in Ghost in the Invisible Bikini. So, and Vincent Price will pop up, here and there in the AIP, films. So these films they were populated, mostly, by people who had experience, people who were, good actors. People are on the way up, people are on the way down.
And they did entertain us, and they've become immortal in our memories. And
well, see, I think that they've kind of slipped away, really. I don't see a lot of it on. It hasn't come back around yet. Maybe I'll say that. In the 90s, early 2000s, especially with AMC, American Movie Classics, AMC and Turner Classic Movies ran a lot of those movies often, and they don't seem to have come back into rotation. I don't know if they require sort of a different psyche, or a different national mood or what, but most of them overall are mindless, fun entertainment. No moral message or anything like that. They just haven't come back around yet to be appreciated.
Turner shows them every once in a while.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll group a few of them together, but
Greg memorizes Turner's Guide every week. He does.
it's my Bible.
You want to see our DVR? I mean, it's just like 99.9% full.
did Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon ever make a movie revisiting their earlier movies?
Oh yeah, we went to see it at the theater, but together, believe it or not. It was called Back to the Beach.
Okay.
Late 80s, I think it's 87 or 88. They still look, well, I mean, it's a long time ago. They still look fabulous. Connie Stevens is in it. And the movie's well made. Like I said, they still look great. They're still, she's still healthy. She had MS, unfortunately, and passed away about 10 years ago, sadly. And somebody I've never heard anything bad about, would be Annette Funicello. Never heard of any kind of bad experience, and you just couldn't imagine it anyway. She just doesn't look like somebody who ever had a bad day. Well, no, there are people who live
happy. Yeah.
There are people who live charmed lives. I have not very many of them, but there are some out there, and you could either be jealous of them or just sort of admire it. But she just seems to have been. I'm sure she had bad days. I'm not saying that she lived a life that charmed. She was ill for a long time, however. But I just can't imagine her being bitchy to anybody, or screaming at a waiter because her steak wasn't done to the way she had asked. I just can't see it. But who knows? You never know. Never heard anything. Aaron never said anything but nice things about most of the beach party people. He had bones to pick with a few of them, but for the most part, it was a really positive experience for him.
Now, we only have a few more minutes left, and what thoughts would you leave people with as we conclude this episode, and before we get to the next episode, which will be a continuation of beach party movies? You've approached this from a lot of different angles, which was enormously awesome. What would you like people to think about before the next episode airs?
Well, think about what factors there were in politically and culturally in the late 50s and early 1960s to sort of spawn this on. California at the time was the locus of most film production, and the Pacific coastline's beautiful. A great place to set up a camera and shoot a movie. And I think it made a lot of people aware of getting away from home, traveling to different places, living in different areas, moving to the coast where they could appreciate the sand and the surf and the sun, which, like I said, a lot of people in the Midwest probably lived their whole lives and never got to see it. In different
Pacific. It's been decades since I've been there. Now I want to go and visit.
Well, me too. I've got gypsy feet, so I mean, I like to. Well, I do. I like to get out, especially when the weather's nice. Well, that's not really true. We travel whenever we can. It's one of the reasons why I'm retiring, so we can travel more.
Greg, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I love the whole genre of all this. Mm-hmm. They're just so much fun to watch. There's nothing nefarious about them or evil about them or anything. Black. What's good is obvious and what's bad is bad. But they're not so awful, really. I think it's a nice. They're lighthearted and they're a lot of fun, and it did. There were a lot, if you watch them, there are a lot of music acts in there.
Yeah, music acts that you will. This is the only time that you can see them perform. Is in a particular film, especially for some of the one-hit wonders that tend to pop up. And there were a lot of these movies. And Tom Lisanti has written a number of books. He's an acquaintance of mine for probably like 20 years now, and in his right, a great scholar. He's moved on from films to doing books about daytime dramas, and I think he's really found his niche, and that he seems to, his enthusiasm really comes through in his promotion.
But I tell you, if you talk to 9 out of 10 people, if you mention the beach to them, somewhere in the images they have in their head, somewhere there's a beach movie that comes up, an image from the beach movie.
That's true. Or you think of Annette and Frankie or something like that. One of my prized possessions, which I've had for decades now, is we have certificate of authenticity. It is a signed poster of, the poster itself is reproduction, but it's a signed poster of the 1963 release Beach Party, and it's Annette and Frankie.
That,
So,
that is awesome. And speaking about promotions, let's promote you. How can people find you? How can they watch the movies that you put up every day? How can they become part of the Brian's Drive-In Theater experience?
well, if you want to find me on the World Wide Web, go to briansdrivein-theater.com, Brian with an I, and go to your favorite search engine and type that in, and it'll bring you to the website. The website's updated every day. We have a movie of the day. I update the birthdays. And like I said, I'm in this website. I'm in the site every day, trying to hopefully constantly improve it. And I'll have more free time here before too long. So we'll see if I can get obsessed, about updating it. We'll see. And if you want to interact with me on social media, I'm most active on Facebook, and just run a search for Brian's Drive-In Theater, and there again you'll find me. I'm on Twitter, but I just lurk. I don't really do anything beyond that. And I have a beef with Instagram, so I'm not there again yet, but I'm thinking about resurrecting it.
Thank you, sir. That was an awesome episode as always. And thanks to our wonderful audience for watching. This will be on YouTube by midnight, hopefully.
Oh, wow.
Be out into the world, and I will send you a link when it posts. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, joyous journeys and amazing adventures.
Good night, Hercules.
Good night.
Night.